On this show, we're driven by curiosity. We want to chart a path forward. Best people, best conversations. We're on a journey and it's just getting started. All right, everybody, we're back. I'm Jack Murphy. This is the Jack Murphy Live podcast. And today we have a returning special guest. We've got the philosopher, Russian philosopher, Aleksandr Dugin. We had a terrific conversation about a year ago, just over a year ago, as a matter of fact. And it left a lot of questions open-ended. He's also come out with a new book in the meantime, and we're going to be talking about that. Joining me live all the way from Moscow, Russia, where it is, I think, like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, Mr. Aleksandr Dugin. How are you, sir?
Hi, everything quite right. Happy to meet you once more.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And, I think if people are interested in the background on us and on you, they can watch the earlier show and do a little bit of research there. So we're going to skip with some of the more typical formalities and just get right into the meat of things, if you don't mind. The book that I mentioned is right here, The Great Awakening versus the Great Reset. And one thing I really loved about reading this was that it felt like in there was a continuation of some of the concepts that we had discussed in our first show, namely about sort of your repositioning and review of America, the West, a differentiation in late modernity versus modernity, the late West versus the West, and a understanding that there are people within the United States who as well are opposed to the globalist the global homo, can't even say the word, the global homo-ness of the world, the globalists, the Great Reset stuff, which has come to light very strongly during COVID. And so there's a lot of questions I want to get to, and I'm just going to get right into it, sir. In the early parts of the book, you discussed this notion of nominalism. You equated it with liberalism. And with liberalism, you've focused, we've talked about this before, there's a focus on the individual, and you've also equated nominalism, liberalism, and capitalism together, incorporating the property rights regime. And in our talk, we also discussed about how the U.S. was the first nation where the people had a direct connection to God. Now, these were the Protestants. And the Protestants were the people that came to the United States. They saw the United States as a new Zion, as a place to create the promised land that they were seeking and to build a new society for their religion, which at the time was very unique and radical. These are the people that make up the American heartland. These are the Protestants, are the people that were a large part of the support for Donald Trump. It was the rise of Donald Trump, which you told me asked you to or triggered you to reconsider your perspective on the United States. And in your book, you've called out to the people of the United States as partners in the fight against globalism. And so I am trying to wrap my head around that. How can the nominalists, which are the Protestants, which are the people who are the American heartland, also be part of the Great Awakening, which is against the Great Reset, which you have discussed? Can you please help me understand that?
So first of all, we need to understand the change in liberalism and modernity. So, and normally, you are absolutely right. So we have nothing in common. We are Orthodox people. We are holistic. We are against individualism. We are against modernity. We are against Protestant understanding of human nature, of God nature. We are in favor of the church. We are church-centered culture. In that sense, we are more close to Catholic, but we are much more conservative than Catholic, but very far from Protestant Russian. I mean, we Russians. But at the same time, when we consider the changes inside of this modernity, we could remark very interesting situation, and that was precisely exemplified in the case of Donald Trump. So the early liberalism, early individualism, early capitalism, old capitalism, feels itself less and less comfortable in the presence of the new capitalism, of new liberalism, new democracy. New democracy as defined by Francis Fukuyama as the rule of minorities, directed against the majority, because the majority can always turn into the totalitarian, authoritarian, fascist, communist, and so on society. So this new definition of democracy, the rule of minorities, a new definition of political correctness, when any kind of the freedom to be man or the defense of the religious traditional values are considered something totally impossible, criminal, and they cancel, they invite the people, new liberals, invite the people immediately cancel everything that doesn't fit in their very narrow definition of what is good and what is bad. So if we consider three liberal political thinkers, very closely linked to each other, Friedrich von Hayek, the first, his pupil and disciple, Karl Popper, and his pupil, George Soros, we could measure this change in the lapse of the time in 100 years, that traditionalists, right conservative liberal Hayek, in defense of tradition, of what is established, saying conservatism, a completely revolutionary, totally against any class, any traditional institution, family, state, gender, patriarch, church, George Soros. This is the same, but they represent the new poles. So that is the meaning of this main message of this book that you have shown, that we anti-liberal, anti-globalist, anti-capitalist, anti-Western power in the world, we see new ally in this old, good old liberalism, good old conservatism, that has very small thing in common with us. But we have more than that. We have the common enemy. And that is the basic principle of politics, according to Carl Schmitt. So we have the gang of new liberals, new Democrats, new post-human rights defender, because human rights is too old for them, it's too traditional, because they are ecologists, they are in favor of artificial intelligence, they are in favor of post-human values also. They are for big tech and for something that is completely unhuman. So yesterday they declared themselves as defenders of the human right. Today, no, to human rights it's obsolete for them. Human rights is too fascist. It's too conservative, because human should be overcome by some post-human species. And that is new kind, that is logical, in my opinion, in my eyes, it is logical development of the same tendency, but in the different stages. But nevertheless, Trump's example has shown that is working, operating, that is real resistance inside of American society, inside of the Western society against this new tendency. And that is why I have revised, I have changed a little bit my attitude in the time of Trump to Protestant American culture that is not too close to me. It is not the thing I admire, to say the truth. But I see how we're getting closer and closer, because we are victims of both of us. You Americans and we Russians, we are both the victims of this globalist new liberal agenda. We are cancelled, we are marginalized, we are demonized, and if we stay separated, if we stay in the same place, they will use us to fight against each other. And that is more and more likely. It was Biden with new tension between our country, and they will be not them who will fight. That will be you and myself and our friends and children's and Americans. Protestants and normal conservative people will fight against Russian conservative people in the favor of global elites. I think that is, we need to avoid that. We need to avoid it. That is why I insist today that we should revise the attitude to America. We should separate, divide American people as something traditional and something organic and something culturally and historically based, and this new globalist elite that uses American people and their anti-American, anti-human purposes.
I agree with that. In my book, Democrat to Deplorable, well, I agree with some of that. In my book, Democrat to Deplorable, I clearly laid out that there are natural alliances between the Russian people and the American people, and I didn't understand why we were automatically to assume the Russian people were our enemy. And I think I can see, you didn't mention it, but Woodrow Wilson, his progressive ideology implemented in the early 1900s in the United States, this is part of what's coming to fruition today. The ever increasing reliance on science and the idea that we can improve things if we just try harder and we can reach some level of perfection that is now playing itself out. Interesting to me that you make the connection between George Soros all the way back to original Protestantism in the United States and the dependence on, its emphasis on private property. That was an interesting connection I hadn't made before. One of the things that I feel like I really need to ask you about is, in the book a couple of times you really equate liberalism to capitalism, and then you say even directly, I think this is a direct quote, we must be finished with capitalism. I think that sentiment might be a difficult one for people in the United States to swallow. So could you expand on that? Because I think our big fear, right, is the competing economic systems and the traditional lens for American, Russian, antagonism was competing economic systems with communism leading to terrible outcomes, and capitalism we thought leading to very positive outcomes. But in the book, you're very clear to equate liberalism with capitalism and saying that we need to be done with capitalism. Can you explain that and what would actually come next at that point?
So, first of all, if we consider the thing in the primitive way, we oppose normally capitalism and communism. But if we get deeper, we could identify in the capitalism precisely the system created in the modernity, in the Western modernity, on the total destruction of traditional world order, with the normal hierarchy, with the warriors, aristocracy, with the clergy, with the working on the earth people that represented real third estate. Real third estate in the European, in the European societies was peasantry, not merchants, not merchants. The merchant represented only small part. That was not a huge amount of population. The peasants were, and these three estates were living in an organized sacred society. With the modernity, all that was destroyed by bourgeois, by capitalists. All these medieval order, traditional sacred order, all this tradition based on Plato, on Aristotle, on the classical antiquity, going before the Christianity and inside of Christianity of Middle Age, all that was destroyed by modern science, by modern capitalists, and new figure that has replaced clergy, replaced aristocracy, replaced peasants, this bourgeois. That is a kind of replacement of the real organic life of the society with some abstract figure. And that was beginning of the end, in my opinion. So I'm explaining why I identify capitalism and liberalism. So, but when we put this in historical perspective, we see in the capitalism anti-tradition, anti-Europe, anti-classical heritage, anti-sacred relation to the gods, to the society, to the nature. So we have lost what was most precious in Western civilization. This transcendent relation, the holistic Aristotelian physics. All that was replaced by fragmented, totally artificial modern science that has led to the situation where we are. So I see direct connection between Newton, for example, and artificial intelligence. I see direct connection between the first bourgeois capitalists and George Soros or Bill Gates. They look different, but they represent different stages of the development of the same tradition. But when I speak against capitalism, I have no idea to oppose socialism or communism. Not at all. Not at all. We need to get out of all the modern political ideology to come to, for example, to come to the pre-modern, to the not Western. We should, or postmodern or post-Western, we should explore new realms of the reality, of political reality. So I oppose to capitalism forced political theory based on the return to the sacred values, based on the full-scale traditionalism, as explained and developed by René Guénon, Julius Evola, European authors. So defended by Carl Schmitt, who was a partisan of the catechonic vision of the state with mission in empire, Holy Sacred Empire. So based on the Heidegger, on the Western but anti-modern Western philosophy. And when we explore that, we see in Russian pre-communist, before Soviet Union experience, political experience, something very similar to that. So we need to overcome this hegemony of the Western modernity in order to save the humanity from the West and the Western sane part of Western population from this modernity. So I identify the problem not in the communism, but in the modernity, Western modernity in general.
I did note that in the book, you're very clear to say this is not West versus East. This is not NATO versus the rest, but it is specifically this notion of liberal versus humanity, as in the liberals seek to end humanity. And I think that a lot of us here in the United States, people even who appreciate the founding of the United States and cherish American values, we can very much see how this modern extension of capitalism, the corporatism, the corporate government alliance, which we used to call fascism, which is happening in the United States right now, that these things are bad, right? These things are bad for everyone, and we want them to end. I think that people will get skittish when we start thinking about the end of capitalism. Have you come up with a new model? Like, are property rights a thing in the future of fourth political theory? I think that would be a very important notion for us to understand here before we can come out and say that we're all definitely in a common alliance. I mean, we certainly have a common enemy. That's clear. But just one detail here, property rights, personal property rights.
Yes, but to have the private property, it is not the capitalism, not at all. The capitalism is destruction of any transcendent dimension of the society. You can make that without private property, but by the tricky processes it will be taken from you, as in the modern neoliberal capitalism, when there is no normal possibility to small or middle level enterprises to develop. Everything is the hands of the monopolists. It is not real old private property. It is just image, just the phantom. It is simulacrum of private property that is now. That is not all good old capitalism when you owned what you owned. Now you always are in debt. You should pay to this, to that. You have nothing. You are already from the beginning of the life. You are already sold to this corporate structure. But and they still use private property as the argument against their enemy, to demonize them. So private property should be respected, but it is not the main thing. So it is not about private property or collective property. I think that private property should be in the area of private affairs, and the public property in the field of public affairs. So everything should be put in their places. We could not, for example, privatize some public institutions. It is, in my opinion, it is perversion, because the owner would dictate, one man would dictate to the other, to the society, his or her own personal positions. We should respect the differences between people and men, and I think that private property should be in the private sphere, not outside. And in the public sphere, it is preferable to have public property, and the relations between them could be established according to the circumstances. It is not dogmatic. It should not be dogmatic. We're not about that. Our position, forced political theory, is not about that, to private property or collective property. It is about the values. It about what is the society, what is idea, what is the mission, what is the goal of what is human being. Because human being, we could not reduce human being only to property, to collective or private, neither collective nor private. So I think that, and going to following two small narratives, two little fragments of the reality, we are losing the whole picture. We are losing the main problem. So it is not about that now. In the capitalism is more effective now than communist China in socializing and taking out the private property. In China, in the socialist communist China, the capitalism is much more sane, I would say, than in the West. They respect private property, and huge corporations in the West have privatized everything. They have taken everything from the people with some business capacity. And COVID pandemic is the last stage of this liquidation of old capitalism. But I see that, for example, there are formal opposition to capitalism, for example, from the traditionalist point of view. And there is the difference between the stage. And my idea is to create alliance between old liberals or old capitalists, old Democrats, with anti-democrats, anti-capitalists, and anti-liberals, because of this final development of this tendency. Maybe it is a proposal to revise a little bit historically the position of old capitalism, or maybe to create something new, to get out. If we win these bastards who are now ruling us, you and us, ruling humanity for their purposes, we could create something new, not only to stick always to the old problems. So we could create new Middle Ages, as our philosopher Nikolai Berdyaev has suggested. We could create new society, and people should decide. But what is important, the people should decide, not this unelected elite that has usurped, privatized the right to rule all of us and impose on us their crazy ideas about what is good and what is bad, what is possible and what should be cancelled or prohibited. So that is the problem. So we could imagine some new solution. It is we should win them. This time, common enemy is not tactical. This time, it is ideological, because that is the pure evil. Biden, globalists, it is a pure evil. It is evident for you, and it's evident for us. That is the great awakening, to see what pure evil is. Maybe we look like evil for you, and maybe we are. Maybe you are not as exactly as ourselves, and maybe we have many differences, but you are not certainly pure evil. American people is not pure evil for Russian people, and Russian people is certainly not pure evil for American people. Maybe we are different, maybe we disagree on many issues, but we have the common pure evil, absolutely pure evil, with no human dimension. And they exploit you, they exploit us, they sanction you, they cancel you, they sanction and they cancel us. So we should stay together. That is the common one awakening for you and for us, for Europe, for East. And we should not exclude from that nobody else who is coming to join us.
Thank you for that. And just a programming note, guys, I may or may not agree with everything that he says, and I'm certainly not going to challenge him every step of the way, because we're trying to have a dialogue, and I'll leave the judgment up to the listeners. I appreciate the flow and the conversation. How are you perceived by the Russian powers, by the Russian oligarchs, by the president in Russia? How do they think about your view here and these statements that you're making? In the book, you say things like, obviously communism bad, capitalism not good. You say, get out of the cities. I've been to Moscow. I've seen the city. It's filled with energy and things from all over the world and all kinds of money and wealth and opulence, everything everywhere. And you're telling people, get out of the cities. Is Moscow as corrupt as Washington, D.C.? What is the perspective of the people who are running Russia, of you and this view that you have right now?
So it is a complicated case. On one side, the rulers of modern Russia, Russian elite, is more or less the part of global elite, and they dream how to join, how to stop all disagreement, how to join the club, how to exploit Russian, American, and European and all other population together. They are globalists and liberals. The people like Kudrin, like Gref, the owners of all this building and this global capitalist liberal who rules Russia, as well as who rule America. But we have some other factors. We have Putin, who partly share the position of myself and the people like me. But that is the people. Russian people thinks exactly, maybe approximatively like myself. So I'm trying to give the form to the expression of the spirit of my people. I'm not speaking on my behalf. I'm speaking, I try to transmit the main idea of historical entity, Russian people, and Putin hears it, and he's very attentive to it. And he makes from time to time direct affirmation, declaration, sayings exactly in the same spirit, exactly. So, and that is clearly the sign that he understands that. There are other important factor. So the people from army, from secret services, the people who now rule the Russia with oligarchs. They share, they divide many sectors in the ruling of Russia, and they belong to our camp, generally. So if, for example, Russian oligarchs hate me, really hate me, more maybe than the Americans, they love globalists, but they hated the same people, the same Russian oligarchs hated Trump. That is very important. They hate me as they hated Trump. And I'm absolutely sure they would hate you and every American patriot, because they hate any kind of patriotism. Russian oligarchs as well as American oligarchs. But there we have Russian military sector, Russian secret services, and they have power. Because Putin is has based his might, his rule on two elements: on this in the state, on this sector of military, and on the oligarchs. And so we have at least half of the state on our side. And for example, you know that the Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu, recently has declared that we should get out from Moscow to establish new capitals and new city in the Siberia and to live there. We should live on the land, on the territory of great Mother Russia. We should return to the peasantry. We should return to the tradition. And we could hear that from Putin, from Minister of Defense, from Minister of International Relations. But Russian oligarchs, who are very powerful, they have their own agenda. But there is third factor. Russian people. Russian people has small influence. We have no democratic society. Our society is not democratic. It's much more authoritarian. But it is people is the basis of legitimation of the ruler, and Putin understands that as well very much. So maybe personally, as individually, he is inclined in favor of oligarchs. But what to do with the people who think differently, and how to gain the loyalty of the military sector who thinks differently? So Putin unites these two poles, and that is that becomes more and more difficult for him. And there is approaching the moment when everything, when starts Russian Revolution, new conservative Russian Revolution, because we should liberate ourselves from this oligarch, from this part of the global Bidenite globalist elite, and we need to totally reform Russia and restore Russian tradition. And it is not just the dreaming. Maybe I could confess myself to be dreamer, but a metaphysical dreamer and realistical dreamer, because I could make reality check. I could compare, for example, my proposals from the beginning of the 90s, when it looked absolutely crazy. And my foundation of geopolitics looked like totally unrealistic, imperialistic crazy dream that had nothing to do with the reality. And in the 10 years with Putin, and after that with his rule, almost half of this book and the projects was realized, was put in the reality. And so to dream is to define the way of the future. It is not irresponsible fantasy. To real geopolitical dreaming is the very, very precise science and a very special art. So I think that when we take in consideration this complexity of Russian society with military factors, who almost all military men are naturally Eurasianists. They are naturally in favor of tradition and empire. They are absolutely anti-globalist, and they are in favor of strong state, strong tradition, and they share with myself normally from the beginning of conversation almost always any points, as well as the people, normal people, middle people, but elite, economical elite, some youngsters, some people, and not all, but because globalist culture affects young population, but not at the level that they presume, because the nature of the Russian society is deeper than that.
Excellent response, and so much there to dig into. I have a million questions in my mind. I have a million questions written down here. I'm going to jump around a little bit, so forgive me if we come back to some things in the future in this conversation. But in the book you wrote, and you mentioned it just now, Russian Empire is inevitable. I think that in us trying to build a connection here or appreciate the common enemy, when an American reads that, I think that it sets off alarm bells. Russian Empire is inevitable. Could you explain to me what you mean by that? How do you think the imperial subjects of this inevitable Russian Empire feel about that? How should we react to a statement like that? Help me understand what you were saying and what that means for you, the people in the Russian orbit, and us as Americans over here in the Western Hemisphere.
So I think that empire, we are all European people, we are heirs of empire, of the Roman Empire. That's capital in the United States. That is Third Rome doctrine in Russia. So we are Roman. We are heirs of Middle Ages. And the problem is that that was split on the interpretation of the empire. And in modernity was as well imperialist. So empire is the constant factor of organization of Western society, Roman, Greek, Christian, including capitalist empire. So Neil Ferguson claims that America is empire, but that is globalist empire, and America is empire. Strategically, it is most powerful empire in the world today, still today. So, but you call it differently, maybe. But you are empire more than us, and we want one thing. We like to become empire as well, not the only one, not against you, but as well. You are empire. Let us to be empire on our scale. If you can consider that you should control, supervise, or somehow put in the order different part of the world population, is up to you. It's clear that you could not afford to be leader of the all humanity. Not now. It is the end. This dream has ended. So, in order to fight back, as globalists want, to preserve, or neocons want, to preserve at any price, at the price of the war, this empire falling apart, maybe to create more realistic empire, more realistic national American state with some satellites, with some zones of influence, as Trump suggested. So you still be in fire, but you will be put in natural boundaries and natural frontiers. But what will appear on the new space, liberated from ex-American presence? We need the order there. You could not afford anymore the order in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, in Afghanistan. And that is why you get out of that, because you could not suggest the order. We could not suggest Russian order everywhere, but in some territories around us, we could afford it. So we always did that, and we will do that in the future. Our empire, we want to be empire as you, but not on the global scale, but respecting your natural boundaries, civilizational boundaries, strategical, geopolitical. We respect your great space, Großraum, as Carl Schmitt said, and please respect ours. So we don't want to put on you our Russian idea. We have we are not anymore Marxists. We are not anymore the bringer of the global revolution. We, with great happiness, we would be very happy to leave you alone to create exactly the type of society you want. We don't want to attack or impose our values, but let us defend our values. Please leave us alone, and we will be friends. That is my idea. So Russian Empire. And at the same time, we could consider and accept Chinese Empire, because now Chinese Empire, it's clear empire, Chinese Empire. It is something third. It is not yours, not ours. It is some special civilization, maybe good, maybe bad, is different, and let Chinese live in their empire. We should not allow them to impose on us their rules and values, but they could continue to be what they are. It is for Biden, it is something unacceptable. Great Russia, great China. He wants only great globalist elite, or great America for them, or an American normal, organic, big, strong state. They hate it exactly as they hate Russian Empire or Chinese revival. So once more, this anti-empire thought of the globalists that want to preserve their empire, their own empire, liberal, ultra-liberal, post-human empire, is against the historical organic empires that always were, because the Chinese Empire existed always, Byzantine Empire, the part Russian. We share the same heritage. And that gas, for example, Roman Empire, gas to the empire of the Aleksandr the Great, and that was continuation of Persian, Iranian Empire, and that was continuation of Babylonian Empire. So empire is the main idea of unification of great space. And we, in modern world, we clearly see different great spaces. American great space, European great space, Eurasian great space, Chinese, Indian, Islamic, African, Latin America, and we need to accept this empire to emerge. Bernard-Henri Lévy, French globalist, ultra-globalist philosopher, Biden it. I have, by the way, I have met Blinken once in the Amsterdam in the presence of Lévy. We have spoken a bit about the future, and Lévy called that empire and 5 kings. Empire, it is globalist rule. It is imperialism of Biden type, of Blinken type. And against this falling and degrading empire, there emerge 5 new kings, according to Levy: Russia, China, Turkey, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. But in fact, that is the revival of the empire: Chinese, Russian, Ottoman, Persian, Indian state. So that is interesting. We are going out from the time of the one empire to the imperial world order, and that is the only alternative. So Russian peace, American peace, Pax Americana, Pax Russica, Pax Kina, they shouldn't be universal. They should impose the kind of values and order in the organic and traditional historical zones. And that why I think that American patriots and Russian patriots and patriots from other civilizations could work together against these globalists.
When you talk about the Chinese empire and other empires existing within their historical context, I don't think that the Belt and Road and all of the Chinese initiatives in Africa and Latin America and such exemplify this respecting historical spaces. Do you think, how does China perceive the United States? Antagonistic? Are they trying to get us? There's a lot of conversation here in the United States about, American companies, kowtowing to China, Chinese influence the United States with fentanyl, perhaps, and just an antagonism between the United States and China. Is there a great conflict brewing between China and the United States? Does China see us being able to peacefully coexist in this new multipolar world that you have put forth?
I think that Chinese use your own weapon. So the capitalism was imposed on China by the West, and they have thought to do the same. So capitalism is expansionist, it is hegemonic, it tries to explore new markets and control them. And the Chinese do exactly that the West has taught them, but with much more efficacy and success. So you should blame yourself for that. So you have shown them example, and they have understood that. So they're repeating, they are implementing your methods. So normally Chinese empire was limited by China, but with this capitalist poison, they try to expand, and that I'm not happy with that, but they have the right to do as the other big power do. So we could not blame them for that. We should maybe oppose. We should put some lines where we could tolerate them. Or for example, the same problem we have in the Siberia, because China has great population, and that is almost unpopulated zone in Russia. So expansion in the north would be deadly blow to us. But I think, in spite of demonizing China, we need to understand them from inside. We need to understand their logic, and they have the logic. I know this absolutely. For example, now first task of China is to make strategical alliance with Russia to stop Biden and to stop globalists. That is the main task, and Putin understands that very well. He would prefer maybe alliance with the West, but West cannot afford. The West proposes nothing. Nothing, only sanctions and pressure, tension, and so on. And globalists, they are pioneers in this politics. So we are obliged, we Russians now, we are obliged to deal with Chinese in order to counter globalist pressure on us, and we fulfill this task. I think normally with some, because now United States in the hand of globalists could not afford to fight, and at the same time China and Russia. So when there is China-Russian alliance, there is this security element for both of us. They are huge economically, we are very small economically, but we are huge on the strategical level. So our cooperation of two poles of three polar world is the kind of very important asset of to counter globalist agony, because I think that next president will be normal American president, representative of real America, of American people, that would accept the status quo, that would accept existence of the uncontrolled sovereign poles outside of the West and outside of the United States. It will try to find a way to, in these conditions, to make America great in the reality, not in this pursuit of the dream of the global rule that is impossible already. That belongs to the past. Certainly, the 20th century was American, but 21st century will be human, should be human, not American. America should be greatest, maybe one of the greatest or greatest power, but not in such state as now. So now America is considered by all people as except the corrupted elite, liberal elite everywhere, but people consider America now as hegemony, declining hegemony that try in agony to save their rule. It is impossible, and that is deplorable. It is really deplorable as the flee from Afghanistan. That I think that that was dishonest, and that was pitiful. That was deplorable end of completely unfounded military occupation. Maybe as our was, because I was not in favor of occupation of Afghanistan. And for us, it signified the end of the Soviet Union, of the Soviet overstretched empire. I think the same thing for America. You should be realistic. And Trump, why I'm fan of him, he was and he is realist. He understands what America can and what America cannot, because all these talks about we can, yes, we can. No, you cannot. You cannot do more than you really can. And Trump tried to do what America can do in order to secure its position. And that was very realistic. And that will find some support everywhere. So the great America is in our interest, but globalist America, imperialist America that try to control everybody on the world, and that is not in our interest.
I think a lot of the pushback that Trump got from the global elitists and the media people, they certainly saw Trump being pragmatic about American power. An interview I saw with him about a direct question about Putin, actually. He said, the interviewer said, Didn't Putin murder people? And Trump said, well, maybe, but we're not so great ourselves. There's killers everywhere, he says. And in that acknowledgement right there, that just like everybody's head just exploded, because how is it that the sitting American president could acknowledge that the United States has gone and done things like kill people, murder people, drop bombs on people that shouldn't be destroyed, to occupy countries that they shouldn't have occupied. And Trump was just in that moment reflecting his understanding of what America had been and how it had been operating itself, and what it was capable of, and good and bad and evil. And that kind of, as they say here, saying the quiet part out loud it was very difficult for the media and the globalist mind to wrap their head around. That was one reason I think very strongly there was pushback, as well as his willingness to have a rapprochement with both Putin and Xi, and even Kim Jong, whatever, that's not ill anymore, is it? Anyway, North Korea, and have that open dialogue that made people's heads explode. Now, again, I'm apologizing to listeners, apologizing to you. I have so many things that I want to get to. I'm going to bounce around a little bit here. Are you the name Yuri Bezmenov comes to me quite a bit. I've watched. Are you familiar with this gentleman, Yuri Bezmenov?
No.
He was
What name?
Yuri Bezmenov. He was he said he was a KGB operative. It came here to the United States in the 70s and 80s, and explained very clearly how Russia was implementing a decades-long process of demoralization in the United States. Your writings in the 90s and other times about addressing and exploiting racial disharmony in the United States as a way to weaken us as a power. All these things kind of are rattling around in my mind, and I'm trying to come up with a way where we can sort of are we out of a phase of Russian demoralization, if there one that ever occurred? People in the United States today believe that we are experiencing the negative side effects of decades-long Russian disinformation, propaganda, exploitation of racial divisions, exploitation of minority divisions, even of inserting the LGBTQ, lesbian, gay agenda into the conversation, a fusion with Marxism, Black Lives Matter. You know, we think that they're communists. The LGBTQ people think they're communists. You have said actually that's an extension of capitalism. Can you just help me understand? Is the United States suffering from a decades-long disinformation, misinformation campaign? Is Russia trying to continually to exploit our internal divisions to make us weaker? Are Black Lives Matter and the gay flag and the Rainbow Coalition, are they communists? Are they capitalists? Is it late stage capitalism? Can you maybe just address some of that? Because I know that that's on the mind of people who listen to me and are trying to make sense of what's going on in the United States right now, right? Because we feel disharmony in the United States. We feel tension. We feel anger. We feel conflict. We see conflict that wasn't there before. Right? Racial tension in the United States. As somebody who was born in 1976, I remember the 1990s. I remember racial tensions being low. I remember there being racism not a big deal. But now I see racism being a big deal. And I see guys coming from Russia who have said, hey, we wanted to sow racial discontent within your country. And now that racial discontent is fused with a Marxist ideology. Feminist literature and Marxist ideology and Black Lives Matter, it's all together. Even the feminists very clearly said that they wanted to destroy the family in order to open up workers to the collective, right? So help me understand that. Are we experiencing a decades-long misinformation campaign and propaganda campaign from Russia? Is the condition internally in the United States partially a result of that? If so, how do we reconcile that, and where do we go from here? Your thoughts, please.
So, first of all, I think that sure, there was a kind of propaganda campaign during the Cold War when there were two opposing ideological systems fighting each other. But result of Cold War with our defeat and the victory of the West, it is reality check. Who was more convincing in propaganda, in seducing the other? So we have fallen under the spells of capitalism, and you continue your way with your values. When the Soviet Union was finished, has fallen apart, nothing was made after that moment against American society. Not first 10 years when Yeltsin was in power, America was considered like Mecca for the Muslims. So that was Vatican for the Catholics. So America was the master and we were the slave. In the time of Yeltsin, maybe America was not had not the same feeling, but you have almost forgotten about Yeltsin's Russian. That was very marginal topic, and that was only maybe some people who were very keen in geopolitics. They understood that something will appear in this space, as always appeared in the heartland and Eurasia, that will represent serious headache, as Brzezinski and the other. But most of Americans didn't care about Russia during this period. When Putin came to power, there was the beginning of the awakening of Russian sovereignty. But America, for the first part of the Putin's rule, was considered as just as part of the West or the friend. Putin wanted to make the friendship with United States. Step by step, he came to the same conclusion that myself many years before Putin, that globalist elite, United States, Atlanticism is the main enemy. Globalism, Atlanticism, this Western imperialism is the main enemy for Russia, and we are obliged to oppose. So, for example, but at the same time, during Yeltsin, during Putin, and now, there is the big and huge propaganda campaign of the West, of the globalists inside of Russian society. You say that the LGBT are Marxist or not, but for example, in Russia, gay rights are prohibited, LGBT is prohibited. By constitution, we consider marriage only legitimate between men and women. We have no laws for homosexuals. So we are most Christian and conservative country, most anti-Marxist, I would say, country in the world. And I think that by purely Machiavellian, realistic reasons, we are interested in the weakening of American society, maybe, but we have no decision to play this card. That we have no real instruments, and the main instrument of Russian propaganda it is successful rule of Putin. So Putin is our main weapon, and that is much more argument not for LGBT or Black Lives Matter by American patriots. So if we have strong patriotic traditionalist ruler of Russia, why not to have Americans Putin as well? And that is the kind of our propaganda. One man is our propaganda, and I would never convince nobody if I would say that we have nothing to do with all these problems. Logically, but you will not believe me, and I don't pretend to that. But I would say the truth, in spite of all this belief, that we have no capacity to make you such harm as you do to yourself. We have no such capacity. So do we want or we don't want, we cannot afford to destroy a society from within. You are much more successful in that yourselves. So I think we observe this, and my personal sympathy is totally on the side of conservative patriotic camp in America, because it is about values, not about how weak or strong America would be. I prefer patriotic, strong America than anti-patriotic, weak America. But what I really am afraid of, it is somehow strong anti-patriotic America. So that is third solution. That is worst for us. So strong patriotic, yes. Weak anti-patriotic, maybe yes, but strong anti-patriotic, that is now the case. That is, I'm speaking about the Biden. So that is why I think that is the worst situation. But I think it is really weak. I think that America could not afford the real military new military expansion or war or in Ukraine. It is just the bluff. I don't seriously believe that America or NATO could enter in the war on Ukraine. For example, it is too far from you. It doesn't belong to your sphere of influence. If it would be Mexico, maybe the situation would be different. If we, for example, intervene in the Mexico and we will declare the Mexico the part of the greatest Russia. In your situation, I would be really bothered by that, but not about Ukraine. Ukraine is part of our empire, if you would like, or our state, our zone of our big space, and that doesn't mean that we want to occupy Ukraine. It is not so. It is just new blame on us, new caricature on old Russian imperialism. It is almost totally made as the image to demonize Putin, but it could be turning true if you behave with this completely created image of enemy. The enemy ends by repeating, accepting that. If you consider me like that as the wild aggressor, maybe, but I would use this picture, and because you, in any case, you consider me the bad guy. Maybe to behave as bad guy, it is your suggestion. That is what I put in things. I propose to you the friendship. I would like to behave like in the club, in the Western club, but you have put me out. So now it is your fault. So to say the truth, I see no Russian trace in an American situation now. I think that Russia concentrates much more on the development of the military high level weapons in order to defend ourselves. That is continuation of the competition in the military strategical level, and that is much more serious. Here, the problems are much more serious, and all the social problems that you have, I fear that it's up to you to solve them, and we have nothing to do. But because I could not convince nobody, I wouldn't insist.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, again, we won't agree. And if I don't challenge something, that doesn't mean I agree with it. But on this one in particular, I do think that there have been influences in the United States that have been percolating for some time now that are coming to fruition, because it has taken some time for these ideas to capture our institutions. They've captured them from the ground up, from activists and radicals in the 60s 60s that have now become teachers that teach kids that now work in corporations, and those corporations, they move up, they become human resources heads, and then they start hiring people. And now the CEOs don't even believe in our basic rights, and are completely captured, I think, by this divisive ideology that may or may not have part of its roots in Russian operations in the 80s and 90s. But again, you won't be able to convince me, and I appreciate your chuckle on that. So let's move on to the next subject. I interviewed a Benjamin Teitelbaum, who wrote a book called War for Eternity. And that book was partially about you. It was partially about Steve Bannon. It was partially about Ovalo from Brazil. And the unifying theme that he found from the three of you, including Bannon, was he put forth a theory, a belief in the cyclical nature of civilization, humanity, and the universe, and that he thinks, and maybe you can explain your position on this, that you and Bannon and Ovalo shared in common a belief that we are moving through a cycle in the universe leading into a dark age. The Kali Yuga is a phrase that was used quite a bit. Other people would use the fourth turning, but that's a much shorter time period than Kali Yuga. And I'm wondering if you're familiar with the book, if you know what was said in there about you, and if you could address if you really do believe that we are in a civilizational turn. If we are in one, are we in a dark age? Are we leading to some sort of crisis that will lead us into a new golden age? If so, are there actors? Are there characters? Are there men in, above, and with time making this happen? Your thoughts and reactions, sir.
So, first of all, I've read the book of Teitelbaum. I've made interview with him before the book was finished. I think that is better than all this very stupid propaganda against us. One of the first efforts to understand our position, not to demonize us, maybe demonizing us, but at the same time trying to understand. And that is very, very precious, I think. And I think he is, Teitelbaum is sincere and correct researcher. I think that concerning the cyclical situation where we are, I agree that we are living in dark age, that is the decay. We are living in the total collapse of humanity that starts, in my opinion, as an opinion of Guénon and Evola, who are the main authorities for us, traditionalists. I don't know about Bannon. Bannon certainly knows Evola. Alavo de Carvalho read Evola and Guénon. We have great polemics with Carvalho. I don't share absolutely his position. We are very on the opposite positions in the main question. Bannon partly because he is the only advisor of President of United States who read Evola and who share more or less traditional attitude. That is admirable as a fact. So I'm not fan of other of his geopolitical vision. I don't share that. But at the same time, it is already wonderful. If someone reading Evola is sharing the partly Gurdjieff for traditionalist position so close to President of United States, so that is fantastic, and that is one of the reasons why traditionalism should be taken seriously and not just as some marginal sectarian, totally unimportant phenomenon as the main public things. And Teitelbaum has shown that is not so. And at the same time, I think that in our Christian Orthodox tradition and Christian tradition in general, we have absolutely the same description of our reality as the time of Antichrist. So what Hindu call Dark Age, we have our special understanding of apocalyptical conditions, of the Antichrist, and of some confusion and chaotic processes at the end of the history. And for the real Christians, the end of the history began with the modernity, because modernity was the Christianization of the Western and global humanity. So starting from this point, and that is very important, modern Christians have lost this very important historical element, that living in the modernity, we are living in the anti-Christian world already, because the normative Christianity ended with Middle Ages. And after that, it was only sectarian, partly Christianity, partly anti-Christianity of modern society. And now we are approaching to the end of this final stage, when appearance of artificial intelligence, transgenders, total loss of morality, normalization of the worst perversions in the law, and all global decay of the moral, of the culture, of this cancel culture. All these signs, they are clear arguments that we're approaching to the critical moment of Dark Age. We already many hundred years are inside of Dark Age. It is not about Dark Age or not Dark Age, about how close we are to the end and what is going after. So being Christian, I could not share the narrative of the Golden Age. I am staying in my tradition. My tradition, my church affirms that after this rule, the end of this rule of the Antichrist will be the global resurrection of deaths, the last judgment, and new heaven and new earth. So it is something outside of politics, but I think this apocalyptical narrative plays a great role in modern politics as well. So when we are still here on this side, I think religion and politics are much more intervened and linked to each other than secularists presume. But if you are not with the Christ, you are with Antichrist. They pretend to be neutral. There is no neutrality. Evangel, the Bible says us, there is no neutrality. If you are not with the Christ, you is against him, and so you are with Antichrist. So no neutral secularist culture is possible, and I think that we are approaching the end of the end.
Wow, the end of the end. Well, on that pleasant note, no, I appreciate that thought, and thank you for clarifying for me. That you can't really partake or believe in the Dark Age, but you do understand in the cyclical nature, and I do understand your description of the Antichrist and Revelation and such. I am not a Christian. I have been reading the Bible, and I have been praying, and I have found that I've been compelled or called or urged to seek it out, because with all my material needs satisfied, with having beautiful children, with having everything around me, I still feel as though there's something missing, and there's something that's not whole. And I think that there are a lot of people in the United States, secular people in the United States, that are feeling a similar call. And I've really been exploring. People have been sending me books on orthodoxy. Everybody, as soon as you start talking about exploring religion, everybody starts to make the case for their version. And I'm curious, because this really is leading into sort of the big question that I had for you, and it's a question that I've asked other post-liberal thinkers like Sohrab Ahmari, and I've put it to Patrick Deneen and other people, and I've been asking this question quite a bit. In fourth political theory, you say there's no universality, there's no universal positive, there's no universal negative. You want to make space for great civilizations. There needs to be room in their natural environments to grow and ebb and flow and grow and flourish. And then I struggle with Christianity, and I'm not struggling with it, but in my understanding of it, where God is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipowerful, everywhere, all knowing, all powerful. It strikes me as a universalizing force, right? If you believe in one God, monotheistic God, all powerful, all present, all knowing, to me that sounds universal in nature. You have just said here that in Christianity there is no neutrality. We have people in the United States that are advocating for a Catholic political economy or political orientation in the United States, the integralists, the Denines and Amaris and Vermeules of the world. How do I square all of this together? I asked Amari this, and he said, and, he's the op-ed director at the New York Post, has a good book out recently. I asked him this. He said it was the most vexing question facing him. In a multipolar world, making space for multiple civilizations, but your civilization, our civilization, Christian, with a monotheistic, omnipresent, omnipowerful, omniscient God, in which there's no neutrality. You're either with us or you're against us in this phrase here. How do I square all of that? How do you have a universalizing force in Christianity where you're either with us or not? No neutrality. With an environment that you have described as multipolar, allowing respect for other people, allowing respect for other civilizations. Help me understand all of that, please.
So it is interesting. So the God is unique, but we think that we know and we believe we know the real God and the true God, and the other people think they know and they believe in true God, and we could do that differently. So the problem today, and when we lived in the traditional civilization, the question of this universalism, of this monotheism, was really central, and that was driven factor, driver of the religious war, of the expansion, of the Islamic expansion, of Christian crusades, and so on. But there was the kind of competition or arguments or fight between the faith, between the beliefs, between the churches, between the religions. And that was one thing. That was the fight for universality of the monotheistic or for universality of one religion. And that had no results, definitive result, because Muslims could claim that they have won, we could claim that we Christians have won, everybody could say we have won. But what we have now, we have a kind of culture, ideology, politics, system of values that attacks all kind of religion, all kind of all gods, and all type of beliefs, and they pretend that nothing like that exists. That modern everything is from matter. Everything is question of the material well-being, and all this materialist world vision ideology has dominated the West after the West with the colonial expansion, whole humanity that was imposed on us by modernity. And we now, why we are in precisely in dark age, because it is not about one religion or one universality or one pretension to universality against the other. The problem today is the pretension on universality of the enemies of any kind of religion against different religions. We should not put everybody in the same basket and in the same place. We should not convince Protestants to become Orthodox or Catholic to become Protestants or Muslim to accept our faith or our exception of Muhammad. It is not about syncretism. We should believe in our unique God and to recognize his uniqueness. And we need at the same time to create a kind of strategical alliance against Antichrist. Because in Islam, there is Antichrist. It has different name, Dajjal. In all Kali Yuga in Hindu tradition. So we have almost in all, not in all, but almost in all great religions, monotheistic or not monotheistic, the same concept of the Dark Age. And we should stay together, defending and fighting for our understanding on what is universal against we identify as the enemy. That is the Great Awakening. A Great Awakening is not only awakening of American people or Russian people or Islamic people. Great Awakening is awakening of the humanity against the enemy of the man. And it is this enemy, this figure is described in different traditions with different names, with different functions, but we identify it unmistakably in what is globalism, because artificial intelligence, transgender politics, cancel culture, globalization, total control, this domination, hegemony of the worst kind of people, perverts and liars and the people who represent a kind of satanism. That is satanic elite that is ruling, and that is satanic for us, for you. It is satanic in there's different maybe terms for Muslims, and that is why we should not fight today for our version of universalism. We should first of all win the enemy. In Greek, there is the great word antikemenos in Greek. That means the enemy, and that means object. That means something that is against you, that is antikemenos, anti-you. And this antikemenos, it is the name for one of the name of Antichrist. But we could use that as a politological term. Globalists are antikemenos. Antikemenos for Christian, for Catholic, for Protestant, for secular people, for Muslims, for Hindu, for Chinese. But not everybody understands that well enough. Many are seduced by this technological comfort, the standards, the mode, the dictatorship of the big media and big monopoly, big enterprises. They privatize the planet, and that is why this multipolarity we could reconcile respect of the other with our strong belief in uniqueness of our God, and inside of our civilization, whoever is not with the Christ is against him. But when we come to Islamic world, we should take it inside, to keep it inside of us, and to try to understand the other, because we have the same antikemenos, the same enemy, and that is different to understand. But it is something that is coming by itself. So more and more people understand how important this principle of common enemy is. It is not this time. It is not about tactics. It is about the result of the history, the end of the history, because this distribution of the roles of the end of the world's scenario is the main problem of humanity. And now we are living precisely in the moment when all the meanings, all the senses of the history are decided. So we are, in that sense, we are chosen because we are witnesses of the chord, last element, last period of the human history, and everything will appear clearly, will be manifested that was hidden in our time and and we are subject, not only observers or object of this, because on our decision to understand, to vote, to support, to fight, to accept, to reject is deciding the meaning of the history. That is why I think our time is so important. The end time is much more important than all other time.
As we say here, that's heavy, man. That's that is some heavy stuff right there. I have always, and many people have said this too, that a great unifying force would be a common enemy. That and sometimes people talk about how the Soviet Union was great for bringing Americans together to have a common enemy. But as you say, that was tactical. If the aliens came, that might be something that could unify us, perhaps, except the globalists would probably feed us to the aliens. But when you put it in this perspective, and show the commonalities among the different civilizations and the different religions and the different ideas, of how there's a common story, the end times and the anti-human. Liberalism is anti-human. It is coming for humanity. These are your words. It will consume humanity, destroy humanity. And they're not actually even very secretive about it. They're pretty point blank and clear about it. And it's right there in the literature, and it's right there in the things that they say, and it's right there in all of the policies that they enact, and the future vision that they put forth, and the mind control that they wish to exert over everyone, and the common one consciousness, but that they control. I can see how this has parallels also to, and again, just Marxist communist ideology, which was international in scope, right? The workers were not national. It was all workers of the world unite, right? Because this was something that transcended national barriers. It transcended nation states, and it was a condition in the Marxist theory, a condition of the people. And I can see a parallel to that in our common enemy of the globalists, and the way that it has evolved, and your distinction between modernity and late modernity, or Western civilization, but like this late modern Western civilization, and sort of making the separation between the two has been very helpful for me in understanding where you're coming from. And I think it's very helpful. This whole framework is very, it's a hopeful framework, actually, to show that we do have commonalities, and we do have things that we need to work towards that aren't tactical, as you said. These are as big as it can be, if you believe in these things. And my personal experience of feeling the call towards religion, or God, or a higher power, or higher being, or some unifying concept with the universe, coming out of my secular life, my atheistic life, my materialistic life, my hedonistic life. Man, I mean, I need to confess my hedonistic sins. I for sure do, and ask for forgiveness, because I tried it all, man. I tried it all. I tried all of the pleasures of the body, all of the pleasures of money, all of the pleasures of all these things, and none of them gave me a sense of fulfillment in that holistic way. And I'm not the only one. We were told when we were younger that you just need to do what feels good, and enjoy life, and taste this, and have sex with this, and do that, and all these things. And those things did not return the rewards that they promised us. In fact, it leads you down a dark road. And so there's a lot of us children of the 70s and 80s that went through that experience, that are coming to maturity now, almost 50, coming to maturity now, and seeing that that not everything old was bad, and not everything new is good, and that we have a commonality here. So for me, it's personally very meaningful, this conversation, and what you've laid out, and the way you've described it. And I know it's meaningful to other people. Our last conversation, people still talk about it a year later. Again, I have a million things to talk about, but I would like to, unless you have any comments on what I just said, because I'm going to move on to one next phase. No? Okay. What do we do? I read in your book talking about addressing the philosophers, the warriors, and the countrymen, and creating a fourth political network and creating an education process. What do we do from here? Let's just say that we agree on the terms and we agree in the scenario. What is your recommendation for moving forward? How do you spread this information? How do you get people together? What is your process? What is your goal? What are we doing to take the next steps? How do you address the philosophers? How do you address the warriors? How do you address the countrymen and move us, as you say, out of the cities, closer to the earth, more traditional lifestyle? How do we move these things forward?
So everything begins with that thought. So that is precisely idea of traditional Greek civilization, that everything starts with logos, and logos is the thought, and logos is the word, and that is beginning of everything. So first of all, first political theory is the structure of the concept, and if we agree on the principles, everything will follow from this agreement. We overestimate the practical aspect or aspect of acts. In the reality, if we share the knowledge is the alpha and omega, and all knowledge, the meaning, the thought, is the beginning and the end, and because everything what we do, it starts with some knowledge, and through the practice comes to the knowledge. So first of all, I think that, for example, in a practical way, if you think well about what are you going to do, you will do maybe some different thing. If you think well enough about what you are going to do, it is clear psychologically, very understandable. So if we concentrate on the principle of the first political theory, if we accept and explore more why communism is bad, why liberalism is bad, why nationalism is bad as well, nationalism because it is modern, we have spoken about the last time about that. So if we agree on these principles, it is easy to repeat them. But to understand them, it is quite different thing. If we are ready to abandon this structure, mental frame, we are so habituated. We lived so many centuries inside of this. The capitalism is against socialism, the nationalism is, and so on. In these three principles, if we abandon them all, we are totally in the new conditions, in new territory, in new conceptual continent, and we could go there, we could explore that, we could start with that, we could start with the other thing. So we are totally free. First of all, we should free ourselves from liberalism, communism, and fascism. First of all, or nationalism. So we should free from all these conceptual frames, and when we are free, immediately we would like to have some stable, some strong, some very concrete support, the point of support. And I think that we come to Middle Ages, to our tradition, Greco-Roman, Western classical tradition, to Christianity, to the sacredness, to Eastern tradition, to other tradition, to compare with our vision. And we, for example, I suggest we take Republic of Plato and we start realize everything that Plato has said in the practice. So first of all, we need to concentrate on the preparation of the philosophers, or on the guards. And philosophers should be the main concern, because there are always people who will make labor on the earth, but philosopher is very precious. So we need to concentrate on the priests, on the philosophers. We need to restore their dignity, their importance in the society. We need to make revival of the respect of this wisdom, of the thought, and put that in the center. We should rehabilitate the soul, the immortal soul that has meaning only in the spiritual civilization, materialistic civilization. Everything hedonistic values prevail over the soul or immortality. We need to restore to the religion, to the tradition, to the sacredness. We need to rehabilitate the warrior, that the man who can sacrifice his life to idea, to some value, to the state, to the people. And that should be blamed as sadistic, masochistic, or perverted nature, as the globalists do. And we should restore the dignity of the warrior and recognize these sacrificial and strong characters. That is the beginning of the state, aristocracy. The states were made by warriors. And warriors and priests and the philosophers, they should be the real elite, not the merchant, not these liars, not these people who can do nothing. They know nothing. They could not fight. They could not think. They are completely zero from the qualitative point, but they have a great amount of power and money, precisely because of their lack of the elite, really aristocratic capacities. So, and after that, we should create, first of all, concentrate on the elite, and after that, we should restore the dignity of the third estate, of the people working on the land, on the earth. That is one of most noble occupation, to be the farmer, to be the peasant, and that is special culture, special way of life. The huge knowledge of the nature, the huge direct, immediate relation to the elements of the world, with tradition, and that I think we could start immediately in all this direction, knowing our tradition, Greco-Roman tradition, Anglo-Saxon, German, French, Celtic, Slavic, and so on, coming to the roots in order to overcome the present. So we need to get out of modernity in all the way possible. So we need to accept everything except modernity itself. It is not so easy, because we are totally impregnated. We are totally we're full with modernity. So it is not easy. And I think we should to start, first of all, inner fight, to kill the modernity inside of us, not outside, to overcome, to win the modernity in us, to be more heroic, to be more aristocratic, to be more devoted to the cause, to be constant, not to be seduced by the technology, by materialism, to follow the path of our ancestors, to follow the path of the people who have created so beautiful medieval civilization, these cathedrals, this piece of arts. Not blame or cancel Dante or Bach, but to be on the level, on the best examples of the culture. We don't understand nothing in Dante. Modern men could not understand why they are here, what is this hell, what is purgatorium, and so on. But we should restore our own self, our identity. West should restore, first of all, Western identity. We Orthodox, we should restore our Orthodox identity. And at the same time, we should abandon modernity. Modernity is option. It is not the destiny. It is bad option. We have chosen the modernity once, but that was the free human decision. We should decide otherwise. We should abandon modernity and we should return to the pre-modernity or creating futuristic vision of something that should come after modernity. So modernity should be destroyed. Modernity is absolutely wrong in any senses, in political, social, cultural, scientific, religious, and what we are experiencing now, that is precisely demonstration, clear manifestation of this collapse of modernity. Modernity is collapsing because it was such as it was, and it is, not by some KGB secret operation of alien invasion. Modernity destroys itself because it was the lie from the very beginning.
Modernity destroys itself because it was a lie from the very beginning. I think a lot of people will have some resonance with that statement. There's a lot of wonderful things here, so much information. I could ask a million more questions, but we're coming up on 2 hours, so I'm going to call it The Great Awakening. Pardon me?
Something with sound.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Here we go. We've got The Great Awakening and versus The Great Reset. And I think that you can find that book out there. I think I found it at Barnes and Nobles. He says Mr. Dugin says that he hears no sound. I don't know why that might be the case. Everything looks good on my end. Levels are good. Hey, chat, can you guys hear me all right? I think everything is going well. I'm sorry that you can't hear me anymore. I don't know why that is the case. But anyway, thank you very much, sir, for coming on the show. Guys, you can find the book right here. It's The Great Awakening versus The Great Reset. It's a very easy thing to read. It lays it out very clearly, all the things that we talked about. Very powerful. I found this conversation to be very powerful for myself. I have a million more questions. We will save them for the next time. I'm sorry for having some audio difficulties with Mr. Dugin here. But again, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Share this, like it, get it out there. Please spread the word. Please also follow me on Twitter. Come to Jack Brunch, all those great things. I'm Jack Murphy. This has been Jack Murphy Live with Aleksandr Dugin. Sir, if you'd like, can you hear me just say goodbye? We can hear you just fine. So if you'd like to say goodbye, thank you very much. Here, let me message him real quick. Here we go. This is why we're not CNN. Please say goodbye. Sir, we can hear you.
Yes, sorry for this technical problem because I have missed some last part of your speech. But I would like to thank you for invitation, and I'm very, very happy to speak with real Americans, natural, organic Americans, and I appreciate your invitation as well. Be sure that Russians are not your enemies, not yours. Not yours. We are enemy of some other entity, and we respect and like very much American people. So thank you once more, and goodbye. Best wishes to all your audience and to American patriots. And I'm sure that we should be united in the Great Awakening.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you for coming on the show. I'll type that out. Really appreciate your time and energy, sir. Sorry for the technical issues, but we can hear you. Everybody can hear me. Thank you very much, guys. And with that, this weird awkwardness, we are definitely out. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Share this, like it, get it out there. Wonderful conversation. Appreciate Mr. Dugin.